if you want to see the winery, follow me. And make sure you have a glass. One of the greatest wines on the Central Coast of California. And I say that with some humility. I mean the building. You can judge whether the wine's the greatest. So a couple things I wanted to describe. The wine we poured on the way in is a newer wine that we developed a few years ago called the Farron. It's a white Bordeaux inspired wine. So in Bordeaux, you have Sauvignon Blanc wines that are often blended with Semillon, but there are some, or many, that are barrel fermented, barrel aged for a little bit longer. And we thought we had an opportunity to craft something at that quality level with similar techniques. So we tried it at first with Semillon and Sauvignon Blancs and did not feel that it worked as well as Chenin Blanc, which is not necessarily a variety from Bordeaux. It's from Loire Valley, a little bit further north in France. But Semillon is not known for holding good acidity, which maybe works better in Bordeaux, where they have an ample amount of acidity in their Sauvignon Blanc. But in California, we're usually working to capture acidity and hold on to it. And we found Chenin Blanc worked a lot better, that blend. I'm gonna have you taste something out of the barrel that's like the next version of this wine. Sorry, before we get there, I stopped here because for those of you who've been here before, you know the story here. But when Jim and Mary Dierberg started this project, it was decades ago. The inspiration started in the 80s. It took them a long time to find a property that they felt like spoke to them as a place that they could craft great Cabernet Sauvignon. That was their vision, that was their goal. And when I asked Jim Dierberg before moving down here, my wife and I wanted to have confidence that this could be at least a 10-year gig. Because we didn't want to leave the mecca of domestic wine production, which felt like a risk to us. It didn't work out. Not a lot of lateral movement in this area, unless we felt like this could be a long-term gig. And so I asked Jim what his 30-year plan was. I thought I was being clever. And he said, well, I don't have a 30-year plan, I have a 250-year plan. And I kind of chuckled and he said, no, I'm serious. I mean, we sort of have this hope that this could be a 10-generation project. And that's why they took so much time and patience to find the right property. But anyway, there are 250 individual cubbies here that represent that dream. And Jim wants to age at least our greatest Cabernet every vintage for 250 vintages. And so we have a library plan where we'll make sure there's at least one bottle of the first vintage left 250 years from its production. So right now, this side is the Star Lane side. This side is the Dierberg branded side, but in terms of that plan, it's all designated for our Cabernet. So I won't be here to taste that bottle, but Jim likes to joke, if you keep drinking our wine, maybe you'll live that long. He also points out that, years ago they discovered the Thomas Jefferson collection, and there were wines that were pre-phylloxera, so before having switched to rootstocks, and from the 18th century. And they auctioned off for about $1 million a bottle. Now we have an own-rooted Cabernet that we made that's only $150 a bottle. So if you buy that, you're saving $1 million every time you buy it. Keep that in mind. So, that does inspire what we do here, though. So we pursue classicism. We aren't looking to go with the wind and the waves and the fads. Not that we don't constantly churn at figuring out how to get better. But as a winemaker, that kind of vision definitely impacts the way you view how you farm your grapes, how you treat your land, what the wine style should be like. Let's not pick too ripe, let's not pick underripe. Try not to get too cute with too many things. But we do have opportunities to craft wine that you have in your glass where it is something new. So it's a great environment to be in. When you went under that exit sign right there, you went underground. So this tunnel goes straight back to the hill that's behind the winery. And I'm gonna have you come taste some Sauvignon Blanc. I think we can do it with all of us. In a winery, we spit out more wine than most people drink, so. Okay, so I'm gonna give you 2 samples of Sauvignon Blanc. We're gonna start, the first one is a barrel fermented Sauvignon Blanc from a twice used barrel. So most of the barrel components should be expired, so it won't have too much influence with the barrel. And then the next one I'm gonna give you is a brand new barrel. And it's part of a trial where we're trying to dial in what's the right exact barrel that pairs with our fruit to help craft that wine you just tasted, okay? So you're just gonna take a little bit of a taste of this neutral barrel, just kind of evaluate it, and then the next one you just wanna see how does it change? Because the juice, the fermentation, everything about it is the same except the barrel. It's important to us that classic wines have good energy. You know, we're not looking to make a dessert, right? It was too sweet. We're looking to have these wines consumed when you're really hot outside, while you're cooking, but it's certainly while you're eating. And it's important to have kind of a backbone of energy and freshness in the wine. But sometimes that's your trade-off. You want to make sure you deliver a strong amount of flavor, and often you have to compromise that energy in order to just let it happen naturally. And so we're testing both, where we're gonna have this sample that add oak to it, to add layers of flavor, maybe a little bit of sweetness, and then what happens if you take this same fruit and you pick it later? It's all to say that 2023 was a great vintage for Sauvignon Blanc. This is 100% Sauvignon Blanc, picked with acidity in mind. So we picked this based on making sure we captured a certain amount of acidity, and then brought it in and fermented it in these 6 barrels, and then picked about 10 days later the same exact fruit, so we have that comparison. And I'm giving you these 2 because these are the ones I prefer. And I'm doing a method where usually I just use my mouth, but I don't want to gross you guys out. If you just fill the hose up and then pinch it, you can get it out. When you smell a new barrel, it probably will be changed, but it's not just going to smell like a raw barrel. So you want to also pay attention to the mouthfeel, because the barrels can actually add an impression of sweetness that is usually pretty positive. And I think this barrel might be doing more of that than it is actually changing the nose completely. Then we have a barrel that can make it more obvious. It's like, oh wow, that smells like a toasty barrel. But that isn't what we're going for. We're going for layers of flavor that are more subtle, that will continue to open up as time goes on. I feel like the wine got a little sweeter or a little less acidic. Less acidic, right? But that is positive integration of a barrel. Because when it is not actually less acidic. If you were to technically look at it, pH and the amount of acidity has not changed whatsoever. What's happening is the barrel is adding sweetness, and it's adding it to a level where you perceive less acid. Perhaps the wine we were just talking, to me, it feels more complete, more finished. There's things filled in that make it feel a little bit more complex, again, without being heavy in. Now, there are barrels that can go too far, where you might have not said it's less acidic, you might have said it's sweeter. That is, when I went out there, I told them, you want that acid to be brought into balance by the sweetness of being added by the oak, without it overwhelming the aromatics, which to me, I know what I'm looking for is a little bit more vanilla and like some qualities that I know are coming from the oak, but it's pretty subtle. We would consider bottling this on its own, 100% oak. That always makes me nervous about to do that, because we don't want the wines to be too oaky. This is mid-April. This doesn't get bottled until December, so that's another part of our calculus. The oak extractives will continue to come into the wine, right? Because the wine starts with 0 things from the oak. So at first there's a rapid extraction and then it slows down, but we have to think forward. And we'll start blending trials of this wine probably next month. Normally, we're buying about, for all the barrels we use, we're buying the equivalent, about 15 to 20% new barrels every year, which means our oldest barrel should be about 5 years old. So this is all French oak. We've done trials with American oak, do our due diligence, particularly on Cabernet, and I've done it before on Syrah before I came here. It just doesn't work for what we're looking for. It's more heavy-handed and a lot sweeter actually. And I just think that California fruit already starts like red, white, whatever it is, except maybe Syrah and Cab Franc. But they already start with a sweet fruit profile. And so we want to be very cognizant of not adding sweetness to sweetness. So it doesn't mean the barrels can't be helpful, but you have to be selective about how you integrate that barrel into the wine. We're going to taste two different from Canyon Noirs. Okay? You know your wine isn't too bad when the barrel makers come and they ask you for samples of a particular barrel. That's theirs. So like when we were tasting with the gentleman that made this barrel, he's like, would it be okay if I got like 6 samples of that barrel? Can I get a free barrel next year? We're going to give you 2 different parts of the vineyard, but they're actually very close to one another. They're all on the hillside. You guys have all been in the tasting rooms. Turn on Drum Canyon Road. That vineyard on the left is ours. And then this is from a couple parts of the hillside block, and then Nico's pulling a special block, block 4, that is basically surrounded by these 2. Okay? In the contrast of 3, this is the blend of 2 parts of the vineyard. Nico's pulling one that different part of the vineyard. But what's so cool about it, these are not far apart in the vineyard. This might look like a big grand facility, but we're doing a lot of very small fermentations. Why? Because we have a long-term plan, our goal has to be to understand the vineyard. It isn't just about making a great wine, because we need to make a great wine 40 years from now. And you can't do that if you don't understand your vineyard. Because there will be a time point where you have to redevelop, that's just inevitable. And you want to have better information to set yourself up for even more success down the road when in 40 years when you're trying to make great wine. One of my early mentors, his name's Aubert de Villaine. He's since retired from running one of the more famous estates in the world in Burgundy. When I first took this job, we had dinner and he said to me, you know, at the domain, Burgundy, we're making better wines now than we were 40 years ago. And I said, well, give me the top 3 reasons why. And the first one was that they're a state, that they control their land in the future. The second one was they controlled their own material, how they redeveloped that land. And then the third one, sorting, which I don't think is that important. But for them, it was, because they were dealing with a lot of mold and a lot of issues that we don't have to the same degree. And so, as a result, this is a long way of saying, we're giving you this comparison because we study this kind of comparison every year. And we follow how these blocks change. And we try to ascertain what's driving the quality of this one that we prefer almost every single year versus this one that's more up and down in how it makes the blend or drives the blend and so forth. So, I mean, Pinot Noir when it's young is pretty good. Especially again, like with the Sauvignon Blanc, this new barrel is 100% UO. It's helping kind of make the wine feel more finished. It's almost giving you a glimpse of what it would be like in December when we bottle it. Now you had asked if I could talk a little bit about like what's the process that's remaining to kind of finish this wine. So we try to do as much work up front, starting in the vineyard, And everybody says this. We really are trying to do it, which is to say that not everybody actually does it. But I operate under the philosophy that when you call your pick and you send the team out there and they pick those grapes, that wine is more or less made. That we, Nico and I and the team are essentially ushers from that point forward. And so there's a lot of activity during harvest and a lot of ushering and paying attention to the wine, the phenolics, the way it feels. When it gets to this stage, you're mostly just waiting. So the last thing to do to this wine is we probably have 6 different components for the Trump Canyon Vineyard. So the blending trial that you all are about to do, we also do with Pinot Noir. It's 100% Pinot Noir. And we will try to make sure we get the right balance of each component of the wine. Meanwhile, they're just sitting. And then before the next harvest, it's sometimes convenient to have these barrels, say, at a different location for the incoming fruit. So we will make the blend that we decided on, put it back into the barrel, let it sit there until December, and then it gets bottled. So these wines only move twice in their life, once for that initial blend in August, and once before bottle. And then they go to bottle. This will be my 12th vintage this year, and 11 vintages so far. That's pretty much how the Pinot's been made. No fine, no additives afterward. Like, we're not having to do any tricks to fancy the wine to get it to where we want it to be. We just do the blending and wait. That's the ideal scenario. Anytime we're having an intermediate wine, for some reason, we ask ourselves, is there something we could have done upstream to have avoided this thing we're doing downstream? Just to make sure everyone understands, this is also 2023 Pinot Noir. It is also from the European Vineyard. It's just simply a stone's throw away from what you just tasted. We're basically tasting 2 Pinot Noirs that are grown nearly side by side. And so one might initially think they would be fairly similar. So if you observe things that are different in them, that should strike your attention. Right? If you're a winemaker and you say, what is going on in these 2 plots? That's driving this difference when I can throw a baseball from one to the next. Now we can observe in soil that there's things that change. So this is on an upper slope, top left, the amount of topsoil shrinks considerably. So the roots don't have a lot of place to go after 28 inches. The vigor of the vines, so like how strongly they grow, is much smaller, much less vigorous in this wine. That's probably what's driving that darker quality. And I don't know if we observe more tannin or drying structure. We always get that out of this plot. Knowing that it sometimes does make its own wine, but often is driving the core of the Trump Canyon Vineyard, I'll push that tannin further, or maybe knowing that I can draw it back with another part of the vineyard. So if you taste this, I know the tannin is quite balanced for me. With time, they'll get there, and with blending, we can bring it there if we have to. So there's a little intentionality on making the wine. Now that we know, 11 years in, what this block does, that can impact how we're going to treat it in the cellar, try to maximize its quality for the broader purposes of Cherbourg wines.